Gravity waves are making waves in the science community, and we respond to our respondents about atheists and canyons. This is Genesis Week. And welcome to this episode of Genesis Week, the weekly program of creationary commentary and analysis on news, views, and events pertaining to the Origins controversy, made possible by you, the supporters of Core Ottawa. Airing right across Canada on the Miracle Channel, all around the world via Roku on the Genesis Science Network, and of course the Christianity Network on YouTube. Excellence in pirate broadcasting. We continue to bring you the information the anti-creationists don't want you to see or hear, and we give glory to our Creator while doing it. Remember, if you get lost in cyberspace, you could just punch in genesisweek.com where you can find us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and get extras like Crevo rants and full interviews with our guests. I'm your host, Ian Juby. The story of the century unfolded this past week with the announcement of the detection of gravity waves making tsunami waves in the scientific community. I haven't heard from Jason Lyle on the topic yet, but both creation science physicists, Dr. John Hartnett and Dr. Russell D. Humphreys, have both expressed praise for the scientific work and the significance of the discovery. Both pointed out that this has nothing to do with verifying the Big Bang, and that the alleged Big Bang is, in fact, untestable, and thus not even science. So just what was discovered? If you recall from our interview with Dr. Russell Humphreys several years ago, space, time, and gravity are intertwined, connected. For instance, clocks lower in elevation and thus closer to the center of Earth's gravity ran slower than clocks at high elevation or in space, which were farther from Earth's gravitational center. In fact, satellites have a clock on board which actually takes into account the change in clock speed. In fact, GPS satellites and the whole GPS system rely on the exquisite timekeeping of the GPS satellites in order to calculate your position on Earth within meters. And so we see that time itself is a variable, and it's influenced by gravity. Now this ties in with what Einstein was talking about with relativity. You've probably seen Einstein's famous equation of E equals mc squared. Stands for energy, m stands for mass, and c stands for the speed of light. Now the speed of light, of course, is measured as distance over time, be it miles per hour, meters per second, kilometers per second, or what have you. In any case, time is an essential part of this critical equation, and it affects and is affected by matter and energy. Out of Einstein's equation, several surprises emerge. The faster you travel, the closer you move to the speed of light, the more time slows down, for instance. If a large mass moves through space, then it distorts gravity and time around it. Time will slow down around the large mass, and so this wave of slower time and gravity will move through space with the mass. Now, like waves in water, the waves of this movement can radiate outward through this fabric of space and time. In the case of the present study, they were observing the waves from what is theorized as the most monstrous stellar object there is, a black hole. Now, black holes are theoretical, but believed to exist in the universe. These are a sort of chain reaction of so much mass being sucked together and creating such a massive amount of gravity that attracts and sucks in even more and more matter in the universe. This chain reaction produces a mass so powerful that even light photons, which do have a property of mass, get sucked in as well. And so even light would not escape from these massive conglomerations we call a black hole. Needless to say, the gravity from these are very powerful, yet we would not be able to see it with our eyes because it emits no light. But If these theoretical black holes moved very quickly, then theoretically they would produce massive waves of gravity spreading throughout the universe from their location. Einstein actually predicted such gravity waves some 100 years ago. What the researchers appear to have measured was not just gravity waves, but gravity waves from two black holes as they collided and became one. So they came together and orbited each other in a faster and faster and tighter orbit until they finally fused, combining into one larger black hole. The gravity waves emitted would have been huge. If only there was some way to measure fluctuations in gravity as these waves passed by Earth. Enter LIGO, Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. There are two observatories constructed in the US, one at Hanford in Washington State and one at Livingston, Louisiana. The observatory works with two 4-kilometer or 2.5-mile long arms, which are vacuum tubes through which a laser beam travels. The laser beam goes through a beam splitter which splits the laser beam down the two arms, aimed at mirrors at the far ends. The beams of light come back and are mixed. The laser light waves come back at exactly the same time, then effectively the waves cancel each other out. However, if a gravity wave passes through the system, it will temporarily make one of the arms ever so slightly shorter than the other. This means the laser light waves will be out of synchronization, won't cancel out, and instead you'll get an interference light pattern on the light sensor. So think of the two arms as extremely sensitive rulers, sensitive enough to detect a change in their length, the equivalent of 1/10,000th of the diameter of a proton. Obviously, with something as sensitive, the smallest of things could trigger a signal, not the least of which is tectonics. Even a minor earth tremor, many miles away from the observatory, could trigger a signal. This is why the observatory can only work with a minimum of two observatories joined together into one, with the two observatories connected but at great distances apart. In this case, some 3,000 kilometers or 1,900 miles apart. On September 14, 2015, at roughly 10 minutes to 10 Universal Time, while the LIGO team was still getting the system up and running for its first survey, they received a signal from the interferometer that was so strong and so clear that no one on the team believed it at first. The signal was first detected at the Livingston, Louisiana Observatory and then observed at the Hanford site 7 milliseconds later. It would take light approximately 10 milliseconds to traverse the distance between Livingston and Hanford. So whatever caused this signal was traveling about the speed of light. From what they can determine, and what the 1,000 researchers published in their paper this past week, was that the signal came from two black holes which spiraled into each other. The signal was so clear and so strong that they were able to estimate the mass of the two black holes. 29 solar masses for the first, and 36 solar masses for the second. One solar mass is the equivalent mass of our Sun. So these black holes were 29 and 36 times the mass of our Sun, and combined into a single black hole of an estimated 62 solar masses, with the remaining 3 solar masses worth emitted as energy in the form of gravitational waves. One of the first surprises being that this was some 3 times larger than they had ever expected. Why they were so large is anybody's guess, but it was definitely larger than anyone would have predicted. This discovery made multiple radical confirmations. It was the first time a pair of black holes were detected to coalesce, approximately 1.3 billion light years away. A light year is a distance, the distance it takes for light to travel its current speed in 1 year. It confirmed Einstein's theory of relativity, first published in 1916, by fulfilling a prediction derived from the theory, gravity waves. Significantly, this also demonstrates that the laws of nature are the same in the other parts of the universe as they are here. Now, all too often I hear the anti-theists calling upon unknown conditions elsewhere in the universe to solve their problems for the origin of life, for example. Really, they are calling upon and hoping for different laws of nature to solve the dilemma they have that in order to produce life from non-life, they must violate well-established laws of nature, such as thermodynamics. Nope, you can count on those laws of nature throughout the entire universe. Now, some might jump up and down and get all excited saying, "Oh, these black holes were, by your own admission, 1.3 billion light years away. So those gravitational waves are 1.3 billion years old. How do you explain that in a 6,000-year-old universe, huh, smarty pants?" Well, I call upon the phenomenon which is stunningly verified right here with this discovery. Time is a variable, altered by things like gravity. So the time here on Earth runs magnitudes slower than it does out in deep space. The gravity around these black holes would be enormous, and thus time would be incredibly slow there relative to Earth. That was the whole point of Einstein's relativity. It's all relative. The moment you get out in deep space, the speed of light is the same as here on Earth, but time is different. Time is considerably faster. Time is in the equation. So while here on Earth the speed of light is approximately 300,000 kilometers per second, out in deep space it might be 300,000 kilometers per millisecond, according to Earth's clocks. The time changed, not the distance. And thus it's like the speed of light is considerably faster out where there is no gravity. So time out in deep space is faster than it is on Earth. Events happening even a billion years ago can be seen and observed here because the time scale is different there than it is here. Interestingly, those who believe in deep time have the same problem of energy and matter getting across the vast distances of the universe in their billions of years. The cosmic background radiation, of which those who believe in deep time are so fond, is too evenly distributed. All of that energy would have to exceed the speed of light in order to so evenly distribute around the universe in the measly 14 billion years they claim the universe has been around. So whether you believe in an old universe or a young universe, you have the same problem. So this discovery of gravity waves, while significant, doesn't cause any problems for young Earth, young universe creationists. In fact, the discovery may have already pointed out a stunning failure in the deep time cosmologies. The LIGO interferometers had only been turned on for hours after a major 5-year upgrade which enabled the system to actually detect the waves. Within hours of turning the system on, they got their first hit of major gravitational waves. Whoa! Just how often are these stellar events happening? If you believe in deep time, you can only have so many of these stellar events per year. In this case, if the rate of black holes and black hole coalescence is really high, billions of years of such events would turn the entire universe into a gigantic black hole. Whereas even at high occurrence rates, a young universe does not have this problem and fits well with the biblical cosmology that has God creating the stars in the sky for seasons, signs, and times, only a few thousand years ago. Now that the LIGO system is operational, I will be looking at the results with strong interest to see just how often such gravitational events are happening and the significance to the young universe, old universe debate. Stick around, we'll be back in just 1 minute.
Now, in its second edition, Chronicles of Dinosauria is a beautiful coffee table reader that is sure to provoke fascinating discussions amongst all ages. Chronicles of Dinosauria takes the reader from creation to modern times from the perspective of the great reptiles and presents compelling evidence that dinosaurs and man lived together, just like the Bible says. In scrapbook style, author David Wetzel presents the biblical, historical, and fossil evidence with photos and beautiful drawings by artist Richard Dobbs. See evidence that humans are found in the fossil record right back to the time of the dinosaurs. The book culminates with fresh research into modern-day reports of dinosaurs living in remote areas like Papua New Guinea and the rainforests of Cameroon. You can get your own beautiful hardcover copy for only $16.99 plus shipping by going to genesispark.com or from any of the major online booksellers.
Woohoo! Mail for me? I forget. You're supposed to cut the blue wire or the red wire? Or I could just pull the detonator. In response to answering atheist arguments, several people wrote in via email, YouTube, and Facebook regarding the free will of angels, such as what Arthur Smith wrote. Just rewatched this and had to comment. He said God gave us free will because he already had plenty of robots and his angels, implying that they did not have free will. However, Lucifer chose to turn on God and try to set his throne equal to God's. He then led 1/3 of the angels, who had to choose to follow Lucifer instead of God, against God. So the angels also have to have had at least a fair level of free will as well. I agree, although it was perhaps a poor choice of words on my part, both in describing the angels as strictly robots and the use of the term free will. Now, there is a difference between man and the angels when it comes to this free will. So I will use the word choice for the angels in hopes of differentiating between the two. The angels are like robots in that God gives them commands and they obey, wholly and completely. Or the fallen angels have rebelled wholly and completely, and no good is found in them. You don't see this mix of obedience and sin in the angels. It's either all or nothing. It's not at all like the mix of obedience and sin that we humans struggle with. In Jude chapter 1:6, we read that the angels which rebelled will never be forgiven, whereas we can be forgiven through Christ. The angels are given commands of what to do, but it would appear God has never given them a do not command, like he did with us. In fact, God really only gave two commands to Adam and Eve, a to do and a do not. He told them to populate the world and do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, the angels, as far as we know, were never given an option to disobey a do not command like we were. This option to disobey a do not command is what precisely gave Adam and Eve their free will. The choice angels have is also very different from ours. Choosing to obey God cannot elevate them any higher than they already are. But disobeying would be a great fall and a great harm to them. For us, obedience brings us into a higher form of worship, closer to God and for our benefit. Worship is for our sakes, not God's, as our worship or lack thereof neither benefits nor hurts God. Obedience is a form of worship, and one that benefits us tremendously. So there is a great difference between the choice of angels and the free will of man. But excellent question, and thanks to all of you who wrote in and prompted this clarification. Several atheists also wrote in a response, and their comments are far too long to cite here. I will simply point you to the YouTube channel where you can read the comments for yourself, and note how the atheists precisely made my point in multiple ways. A common thread was that they didn't hate God, they didn't believe he existed, and even naming Zeus as an argument that God didn't exist because we agree that Zeus didn't exist, and they had no hatred for Zeus. Well, the logical fallacies and hypocrisies are glaring. I never mentioned Zeus, nor Santa Claus, nor the Easter Bunny. Why, pray tell, did you bring up Zeus? Further to that, you atheists haven't written entire books bashing Zeus, so thanks for making my point. Let's see if you recognize this quote from a famous atheist. Santa Claus is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it. A petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty, ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, felicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully. How is it they attribute these qualities to someone they believe is a fictional character? The above quote was from none other than the famed atheist Richard Dawkins in his book The God Delusion, a book dedicated to hating and trash-talking a God he says doesn't exist. Just insert the God of the Old Testament in place of Santa Claus, and you'll have the original quote. Just how is this rational? Why didn't Dawkins write a book bashing Zeus? Why don't atheists spend their energies hating and writing about their hatred and criticisms for Santa Claus? I'll tell you why. Because Zeus and Santa Claus don't exist. Therefore, Dawkins and the atheists don't have an extreme hate-on for Zeus. They do, however, have a passionate hatred for the God of the Bible, whom they know full well exists, but don't want to exist. Incidentally, if you want to have some great fun, just look up The Dawkins Delusion on YouTube, where they take all of Dawkins' arguments, turn them on their head, and prove that Richard Dawkins doesn't exist. It's great fun, and makes the point that the atheists have just proven in trying to respond to my criticism. The atheist arguments are illogical, irrational, full of glaring logical fallacies, and downright hypocritical. In response to our Canyons Everywhere show, Terry Wilson wrote in on YouTube. I'd like to add that I've spotted yet another canyon on world maps, a huge cut through the Grand Banks in St. Lawrence Bay in Canada, a trough in the continental shelf well below sea level. Since the tide flows upstream past Danticosti Island, well upstream of this trough in the St. Lawrence River, such a trough can't be affected by the flow of the St. Lawrence River on any time scale, and the tides are not inclined to follow such a path in the absence of a trough, and therefore could not have caused it. This implies a rather enormous outflow of water, i.e. Noah's flood, from the St. Lawrence River's catchment basin, and is not the only feature to imply such an enormous flood. When it comes to evidence of Noah's flood runoff, please, Ian Juby has barely, pun intended, scratched the surface. Excellent point, and a subject I simply did not get into because of time. Probably an entire show could be consumed just on the subject of submarine canyons. Many of the major rivers on the continents extend into major submarine canyons cut through the continental shelves. A fascinating point that further affirms that the ocean levels were thousands of feet lower than they are today for some time, and that there was a major water runoff from the continents. I would contend on par with the water of Noah's flood leaving the land. Thanks for writing in, Terry. A few skeptics also wrote in on YouTube. Just not true, Ian. Geologists have known for years that the land uplifted, and is still uplifting today, and the water cut Grand Canyon. Basically, the erosion rate of the river matched the rise of the land. Juby, you commented on the standard speech given about the Grand Canyon being cut out by the Colorado River over millions of years. You say that the giant dome mountain should have risen first before the river cut through it. That would mean that the river had to flow uphill. This is, like you say, absurd, and quite unsurprisingly, no one ever claimed this is how Grand Canyon was formed. Part of the standard speech is the uplifting of the Colorado Plateau. The river cut through the rock while it slowly uplifted. While you may not agree with this explanation, you should have mentioned this at the very least. That you didn't is very disingenuous. Disingenuous, my foot! You guys are apparently a little behind the times. The theory you mentioned was called the antecedent river theory, and it was first proposed by John Wesley Powell in 1875. Now, while it was the predominant theory for some 50 years, it was rejected for multiple reasons decades ago. For example, there's lavas on both sides of the canyon which were radiodated. The lava flowed across the plateau, which was then cut by the canyon. That's how you wound up with lavas on both sides of the canyon, because the canyon was not there, and the lava flowed across the already uplifted plateau. So the evolutionary ages assigned to the lavas placed the lavas and the uplifting of the plateau well before the cutting of the canyon. If that theory was accepted by most geologists, then why, pray tell, has there been so many theories proposed to explain Grand Canyon as somehow carving through the uplifted plateau. For instance, the stream capture theory. Headward erosion of multiple streams towards each other across the plateau. A shifting of the areas around the plateau so that they sunk instead of the plateau rising. Subterranean waters forming caves across the plateau, which then collapsed and began to form the canyon, etc. Am I disingenuous because I didn't mention all of those theories? No. You know why? Because each of those theories was proposed because the other theories didn't work and or had no evidence whatsoever to support them. Each theory refutes the other theories by pointing out the very real and fatal problems within the other theories. The only models left standing are the post-flood models of either a major dam breach of two very large post-flood lakes or the receding waters of a global flood. Either model works because the water starts above the plateau. But those two models require a worldwide flood, which you skeptics and old Earth geologists have irrationally rejected out of hand. And instead, you call upon models that were refuted by your own old Earth geologists decades ago, in some cases as much as 80 years ago. Come on, guys, get with the times. All right, I have to run. I'm your host, Ian Juby, saying ta-ta for now. I hope you'll join me again next Genesis Week. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to watch our humble show, as we realize there's a lot of competition out there for your viewership. And thank you to the many of you who have gone even a step farther in financially supporting the show. We've been overwhelmed by your generosity and are grateful, as this is a viewer-supported program, and it's your financial support that's what's kept us on the air. Remember, you can send in your questions, comments, hate mail, and your contacts for surplus Russian nuclear missiles to us in a number of ways. You can email us at comments@genesisweek.com, or you can send us a tweet at GenesisWeek. Or you can head on over to genesisweek.com, find the most recent show, and post a comment there. Or you can head on over to our Facebook page at facebook.com/GenesisWeekTV and leave a comment there. Remember those words of warning and comfort from our Creator and Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me." We'll see you next week. We are a viewer-supported program and need your support to keep this program on the air. Please pray for us, and if you wish to financially support the program, Canadians can make a tax-deductible donation to Core Ottawa, Canada North Post Office Box 72075, Ottawa, Ontario, K2K 2P4. While we cannot offer tax-deductible receipts outside of Canada, donors wishing to financially support the program can do so online at ianjuby.org/donations, and thank you for your support.